and hit the record button. And let's see who is leading today. I'm leading. Okay, fantastic. So I think I might. Okay, I'll still lead this one. I've removed myself from most chair positions in most chapters as sort of a way to get more people inside the chapter to get more experience. But anyway, okay. So let's go ahead and begin. So wow, I just noticed that we have a Slack button on this Trello board. I've been blind about that for the previous past. So let's go ahead and move over to our cards. So the first card I'm looking at is RM Y.0. This is the revenue prediction model for properties. Vidi, let's hear your update on that one.
Yep. So as I've updated since the last RM meeting, we will look at the update since yesterday, 6:21 a.m. So the amenities list, I'll bring up a little concern that I have regarding this card, but basically the update is I've added the amenities list and it's readily used in CSV form or Excel form. That's why I've been able to deliver to the HR team as well as to Lilis initiative. And through this initiative, actually, I found out that a lot of our listings that are marked as active in the database are actually not listed. So it's in bigger, you'll see that listing as listed, but it's actually unlisted. For example, I've provided some example like listings 1192551 and also 127152229. If we see in bigger, it's marked as listed, but if we open the link, it's actually dead. It's a dead link, so it's supposed to be unlisted in a sense.
Okay, got it.
So yeah, I've also made a content request to the content team. I've attached all the potentially dead link through the scraping, basically.
Okay.
But we can see in the screenshot.
Which screenshot am I taking a look at?
The screenshot, the first sentence.
Okay, first sentence. Okay.
Yes. So in the first screenshot, we see that all the amenities have been marked as true or false based on the availability through Airbnb. And in the next screenshot, in the following amenities list, those are the list of amenities that I have recorded. And I might miss some stuff. For example, there are some that are quite rare because I have to know all the keys. But so far, I've collected all those keys. And so long that they are in that list, they're supposed to register on the scraper.
Okay.
And I've collected, I think, 1,035 listings, but I think 100-ish are dead links, and the speed of collection is one listing per 10 seconds. Of course, the constraint is that because I'm using my machine, it depends heavily on the internet speed and also the machine speed. So the complete amenities list I've attached also in the card, as well as the sample amenities to be processed by Lilis yesterday. And also, I've also updated the repository for the model dataset so that with one function, you can get the monthly revenue and split the data accordingly.
Okay.
So that's the update for RM Y.0. And for the concern I have regarding this card, I think because this card is practically a project on its own, like a project that has a lot of factors. Like from this project, I have split. I've covered a lot of other things. So is it too big to be a card?
Interesting. Okay, so basically, you're discovering like little sub projects within the main project, right?
Yeah, and it's been going on for a long time. Like I've made 2 different features from this project alone.
Okay, maybe in this particular case, I would say it's a case of prioritization. I'd say, right? So what I think is happening right now is that it's kind of like the opposite maybe of an MVP. We're sort of like building each chunk correctly, hoping that the end chunk will all come together. Am I right?
Yes. Because according to the flow here, like there are a lot of milestones that we have to go with for this card. Something like that.
Okay. Would it be faster or wiser to, let's say, restrict the scope down to the least amount of supporting work in order to test
Okay.
the
Let me
idea
check.
if the idea is valid. Does that make sense?
I think it's more of what I'm raising is more of a documentation issue. Like,
Okay.
the amenities list scraper, for example, it's a card on its own in the IT board.
Hmm.
The price scraper, for example, also is also another, um, like in IT board, it's like one feature of its own. Also the splitting of data and so on and so forth. So this is like one big project that has a lot of branch, and this is because this particular feature requires other submodules. So like a dependency, and like how should we assign, like should we make a new card for each sub feature, or how does it work?
Oh, and that okay. All right. Um, well, I don't know because what I'm trying to think of is right now. All right. So I guess zoom out a second and ask yourself, uh, are we making progress towards actually?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
But
All right.
because of the size of the project itself, like from the activities list, we can simply observe the activity is always moving, and it's going towards, it's converging towards the end goal. But just for documentation sake, I mean, like
Okay.
sometimes most of the initiative that we found in here, let's say,
Uh,
there are no sub components that can be a project of its own.
okay. The main idea around, let's say, team communication that I can see Vidi, is the
Yep.
ability to share and also to essentially draw in more support around a certain idea. So if you believe that component at this point, let's say, would need further development in now or the future, then I think you can unpack it, right, and allow that component to sit on its own. But if what you think is essentially if that's just a piece of what would help you get to the end goal and it doesn't need to be shared, then
Okay.
I think I think it's like when you write a sub function in a program.
Right.
If you write a sub function and you think, well, other people should get this sub function because this would, help.
Yep, it's a library of its own. I
Yeah,
mean, it's not
yeah, it's a
like,
library
yeah,
of its own. So if you
yeah,
believe that
and people can use it for other purposes.
exactly, so if you believe that that's going to happen, then I would say, yeah, create the
Okay.
documentation so that it's easy to be found. But if
Yep.
you think that
Got
this
it.
will just be, nested inside
Okay.
the big project, then no need to, I guess.
Yep. That's what I'm doing right now. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, for the technical documentation, we can find at GitLab.
Okay.
So that's where we put our technical documentation. But yep. Okay. Good answer. Thank you.
Nice. Okay. All right. Let's work on the next one. So this is the RM Y.0. This is a new market building workflow. All right. Updates on this.
Right. So yeah, for RM U0, I've started to make the mockup through that Figma link,
Okay.
but unfortunately, because of the free version, it's only accessible to two people in one project. So I've shared it with Lilis,
Mhm.
but the flow is already there, I guess, and I've set the deadline for the mockup to be on this Friday.
Okay. That will look good. Okay. Fantastic. This is for the 4.0 flow now. Okay. Next one is Omah Garjen, but that looks like a task. Is that supposed to be here, Vidi?
It is, yes, sir.
Oh,
It
okay.
is.
Okay. All
Yes,
right.
so there's an initiative and task, right? For the task itself, it's already completed. I've shared with Andre, and from this, actually, what I want to discuss actually is regarding the um, insights that I got, and also I've got actually through this task, I have like maintained the one of the code that we are using, and it's now readily available, and the documentation is already available in GitLab. So if Lilis maybe wants to use it, you can read the instruction there. It's already written there. So yeah, that's it.
Okay. Cool. 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 Sounds good. Let's continue that. Let's go over to Lilis. Lilis. Okay. PPS analysis for features
Hello.
revenue.
Bisa dengar nggak?
Yes, Lilis, you got the floor now, and we're just looking at RMY 0.0. This is PPS analysis on features for revenue.
Uh, Thank you, sir. So actually, I've been abandoned the previous project, which is related to HR. Actually, I checked the Kiki's card regarding talent pool actually. But I think it's really HR. Hello, sir. Can
Yeah.
you hear me, sir?
Yeah. All good. Yes. Yes. I
Hello.
can hear you, Lilis. Yep. Please continue.
Okay. I'll update the PPS analysis on the future revenue. Actually, I got the data for monthly revenue from Vidi and also the amenities. But as I don't have any basics for coding, so I'm still figuring out on how to actually. Hello.
Okay. So continue, Lilis.
All
I
right.
heard there was a skip.
Yeah. Actually, I still learn on how to modifying the code again because the raw data from VD, which is the CSV data, is more complex than I thought. I think I have to modify the code.
Okay. All right.
Hello, sir.
Yes. Yes. I heard the update, and you need to learn how to code and mod.
Okay. Actually, that's all my updates. There are no progress so far, and I would like to say that yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And I would like to say that actually I feel like I'm not making progress on revenue management and feel like I'm confused on what to what to help with actually.
Okay.
So
Let's take a look and see where we can put the most, let's say, vital resources at the moment then, yeah, Lilis, to see how we can get it lined up. Okay, thank you for sharing that, Lilis. Thank you for being transparent. My card is networking with Airbnb and Uber alumni. We had our meeting with Ernesto already. So from that, I think we could understand a little bit more about what we know and also the affirmation versus new knowledge. I think we have a pivot actually on this one, and we need to look for. I'll go ahead and update this card actually. Sorry, I haven't updated it yet. But I think we need to seek a ML AI expert on machine on as our next resource. So this goes back to the discussion I think about the what was it? The AI hierarchy was that what it was called, Vidi?
Yeah, what's your sorry, pardon me?
There's essentially a data hierarchy, right?
Oh
Uh,
yeah. Data science hierarchy. Yeah,
okay,
correct.
so the data science hierarchy. I think we hit a little bit too
mhm.
low on this particular um, iteration. But the next iterations, let's try to find somebody who's a little bit higher up on the rungs. I think that would be more fruitful. Okay, so that is done right now. Let's go ahead and I'll rotate the meeting management over to Lilis is next. Next secretary will be Vidi, and okay, and I'll remain as the recorder. Okay, let's jump into discussions then and see if we can get something good going on. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen over on this side, and let's see what we can do to find something good. Okay, we got some new people coming in tomorrow. So, Lilis, you'll be seeing one of your people from your alma mater. We have an Itebe intern arriving tomorrow. His name is I forgot his name actually. I think it's yeah, can't remember. But yeah, let's definitely get our own team in order so that there should be enough to go after. Okay,
Mm,
so
mm,
let's take a look and see if we have any new business, old business for the time being. And currently, all right. So Vidi's got some new business over here. I'm going to put up my new business over here. Inquiry optimization. Okay. Okay, let's go to Vidi first. Vidi, tell us what the insights that you found during the Omah Garjen pricing exploration were.
Okay, so I found some resources regarding the development regarding the government's action due to the corona situation,
Okay.
and I think currently that's pretty new news. Three of them. So two of them involve uh, government setting up the new normal in the field of tourism.
Okay.
And one states that they have decided to make Bali as MVP because they claim that Bali's rates are low, so the infection rates and so on and so forth. So they're trying to make Bali as an MVP.
Okay.
And my concern is that so they're starting to reopen in the month of June.
Excellent.
My question is, are we ready?
Good question, actually.
Yeah, is DV4 ready? Something like that.
Let's go ahead and discuss that. All right. So over to Lilis. Lilis, do you feel ready?
Maybe not totally ready, but BV 4.0 has prepared like the COVID safe certification. It's really relevant to the new normal, I think,
Okay.
for the property business.
Okay, great. Okay, certification. What about you, Vidi? What do you feel ready?
I feel ready. So, but so what I'm trying, what went through my head was, like, there is a at this point, I think how probable it is, do you think, that we'll get trapped in the old workflow?
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's actually a good point.
Yes, because that one, and also regarding how to make our progress like so far relevant to the new normal situation.
Okay, very good. Very good question. I think that's super relevant. Okay, so Andre had this question just today in a different format. So he mentioned that what happens if we need to full scale on operations again? What will be essentially the consequence? Now, I think we need to ask what is ready, right? What do we mean by being ready? So I think the best case scenario, best case, let's say for bookings, is essentially overload, right? Let's say bookings go back way up to where they were before, and maybe we can even maybe we can take some of the people from unpaid leave and start adding them back into the company again. So that would be, I think, a scenario of I hadn't even thought of this scenario, right? I haven't even thought of, let's say, a best case for booking scenario. I guess okay. Let's put ready in a dimension. Let's put ready in terms of a booking volume dimension, right? Okay. So what do we do if the booking volume is high? What do we do if the booking volume is middle? And what do we do if the booking volume is low? Okay. So that can be our matrix for describing ready. If booking volume is high, I think this is very unlikely. But if it does happen, what we would do is we would probably start importing a lot of interns. And we would probably rehire people on unpaid leave. Okay. And we would probably split time from ops or from research R&D to ops. But I don't think this is very likely. I don't think that, let's say, that's going to happen. If it does, then great. Great for revenue. Not so great for long-term plans, actually, but great for revenue. We've almost gotten to a comfortable stage right now where we almost prefer to have a longer recovery. And it's actually budgeted in our plan to actually be more successful when there's a longer recovery. So if there's a short recovery time, good for revenue, but maybe not good for R&D. Okay, so that's if we have a high volume. If there's a mid volume, I think we can manage it. We can manage it by putting essentially HAR to take care of it. Okay, so I think we have enough force in HAR to essentially manage that particular segment of, let's say, a middle. And I think if it's low, then we essentially continue as we are doing, just as like what you see right now. Okay, so then that brings up, let's say, a consideration. If all of a sudden everybody's flooding back, What do we do, and how do we make sure we don't lose this? The best option, let's say the golden option, is that we would hire operations people, right? We would essentially put out job listings and we would not do operations anymore. We would hire operations people back. We would hire air support. We would hire community management people to go out, interface with the owners. We would hire people to do the air support all night long, right? That would probably be the best way to do it. So we would hire back operational workers. The reason why is because if we all go back to doing operations again, then we lose a lot of the long-term benefits from which we have now. That would be my best answer to that solution. Are we ready? I think we could be ready. I'm assuming for the time being that the only difficulty will be in selecting the people who are fit, let's say, to do air support and hosting jobs. So that will be the only constraint. How quickly can we select? How accurately do we select? And how quickly we can onboard and train? So I would say in order to be ready for this, we need to select, we need to be able to attract quickly. We need to be able to select rigorously. And we need to be able to train and onboard quickly, right? If that can be done, then essentially that would be our Bukit Vista 3 operational support, and then Bukit Vista 4 would continue working on research. That would be, I think, the best scenario if we can do it. That's where I'm at. So then the question, I guess, relates to, are we ready to do this? Sitting on the back of my head, this is an HR problem, right? This is essentially an HR. HR will need to create programs to reduce the onboarding time, to make it faster for people to understand, and also to hire and select quicker. If not, then what we'll have to do is we'll have to sacrifice people on research to go back into operations, which is not ideal in let's say a long term. It's sort of like we're eating our seeds to feed ourselves, so we have less seeds in the future. And that's kind of a paradox that we had in the past. So in order to be ready, I think it's mostly an HR question, Vidi. If we can, let's say, find a system, if we have a training system in place and we have a selection method in place where we can do hiring and elastic scaling really quickly, then that'd be great. That would be, yeah, within, let's say, 2 weeks, we can get people here to help with processing reservations, getting guests in, doing the air support. So does that answer everyone's question?
Half of it at least. So my concern, yeah, that answers half of my question regarding the workforce and the allocation, budget allocation for operations and research. But what I'm trying to, you've also, sir, so about the operational being BV3 and research being BV4. So yeah, what we discover during the process of research during BV4, that a lot of our workflow is actually a bit, how should I say, it's not structured.
I know, technical debt.
Yes, there's a lot of technical debt, and that's why the framework itself isn't ready yet, I think. Like,
okay.
Yes, and who goes to who, and
I understand. That's always a startup dilemma, I think, Vidi. And this is why this whole thing has been good for us. It's been a good way to actually reduce the technical debt in the best way that we can.
Yeah.
Because if we had kept on going at VV3, at some point we would have just probably, well, you never know. You sort of like, they say a startup is like pushing yourself off of a cliff and building an airplane as you fall down.
Yeah.
Or some sort of analogy in that method. So a lot of things that don't work, eventually, yeah, you'll probably have to tear them down and rebuild it again. That's what we did with Toki and Google Calendar. So we had a hot swap on that calendar management situation during 2019. And no, wait, 2018. So that was how do we get rid of the technical debt using an old system with a new system? A lot of pain. That's what happens. Yeah. A lot of pain. So if everything can slow down to basically nothing, then there is no pain in creating that transition. I would say that, let's say based on a few scenarios right now, the scenario of things getting bigger and us accumulating technical debt would probably be a middle bad scenario, rather than a terrible scenario, which is nobody travels for the next 3 years, right?
Right.
So if we do get, let's say, a surge of people coming in and we don't necessarily have, let's say, the best processes to do it, then I don't imagine that this would be, let's say, an exponential compounding problem.
Yep.
Meaning that the seasonality would kick in at some point where the roll off would happen. And given that there's already so many uncertainties about travel, I believe that there will be another period where we can do things dirty, and then when things get quieter, we can do things clean. That's exactly what we discussed about the 3 ways of onboarding new partners, right?
Yep.
Which was okay. We can onboard them fast and dirty, sort of the old 3.0 way or the 4.0 way. But in order for us to do 4.0, we still need more time to actually develop things. So to answer your question, Vidi, I guess at any given time, let's say even if things started picking up, there should be all three would be running in parallel, right? There
Right.
should be some way to optimize for revenue, and we do it. And there be shown some way that like optimizes for stability, and we do it. And there should be some way that we intend to release that will optimize for everything.
Yep.
Hey, think of Apple, right? Apple used to be a down and out company. They used to suck. Nobody used Apple. But that's what made Mac OS so much better than Windows. Because when everybody was using Windows at its peak, Windows had no time to go back and fix all the fundamental flaws with the operating system. So they just have to keep on building on top of it. And that's ultimately what led to the frustration around Windows is that thing. And then Mac OS went from nobody using it to becoming popular. But it probably has the same problem right now if there's any fundamental flaws. Because you have such a large user base, it's hard to make foundational changes. So I think there's always a balance, Vidi, between, let's say, technical perfection and revenue perfection and stability perfection. So you get these 3 parts that you're gonna need to juggle. And right now we have essentially a pathway towards technical perfection, but we are not revenue perfect.
Yeah.
And we are not stability, or we're somewhat stability perfect right now, right? We're trying to get to stability perfect. But yeah, if things do get better, I guess we will just have to like try to optimize for revenue while thinking about how to optimize for stability and technical.
Right. So that's the first part of the first half of the question. So the second half of the question is that from the resource, I've been thinking also like about the funneling thing, the demand funneling.
Yeah.
Like where are we at the funnel?
Yeah.
So at this point, while we're staying using Airbnb and this kind of not particular because we use Airbnb, but because of the process that we're doing, like the tradition that we have, it's like we are waiting for this funnel to come in without doing anything to. So we can do nothing with the demand outside of the funnel range.
I understand. Yeah.
Right. So what I'm trying to ask is there even the slightest possibility of us being the active party as opposed to the passive party?
I see what you're saying. Okay, that's a good question, Vidi. So we have to ask ourselves, like, I think. Okay, so should we? Actually, that's a good question. Should we seek more? Should we be more proactive in seeking demand? Should we be more proactive?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to like we still can use Airbnb, but we have to kind of think differently of how we use Airbnb.
Yes.
If it makes sense.
I like that idea, Vidi. I like this idea of broadening the funnel. I'll tell you kind of why. Actually, you know why we are where we are. I guess the assumptions in Bukit Vista 3 do not apply anymore in Bukit Vista 4, but we might still have this assumption in Bukit Vista 4 eventually, which is, will Airbnb be as strong as it was before? Meaning, will it be the go-to platform for people to find our product? And still, I'm under the assumption that that will be yes at the moment, right? Why do I think so? Let's say, for example, you do these deals all through Facebook right now. But can you do 100 deals a week like this? And is there enough of, let's say, a marketplace that there's enough people who are going to seek long-term rentals? The answer is probably no. There's not going to be enough demand to fill all the product using this method. So we know no matter what right now, it's essentially like we're lifting, it's sort of like our truck has fallen off and now it's crashed on the side of the road. But the truck is carrying a huge amount of load. So we need to ask ourselves, okay, at what point do we say, all right, we're just going to carry this by hand across the next 100 miles, each container at a time? Or at what point do we just like say, all right, we're going to get a mechanic to fix the truck and get that to work again, and then we can carry on the rest of our load? So at the moment, I still believe it's the second case. Like, wait for the mechanic to come, fix the thing, and then the truck will work again, and then we'll carry the rest of our load. But let's just say we have an existential crisis on Airbnb where it's unlikely that that will happen. Then we have to break down the load package by package and then carry it by hand the new way.
Right, but this is what I mean, sir. I don't really have any idea about this currently, but how often do we actually promote our products in terms of, like, as I've said before, we do not have to abandon using Airbnb, but like the way we think about how we use Airbnb. And like, how often do we actually promote our product in terms of trafficking these audience to our listing page in Airbnb, let's say?
Well, this is it, right? This is a good pivot into the next discussion about inquiry optimization. So, Lilis, you were asking about something we can do. What we can do right now, I would say, as a company, is I took a look at where we're doing. Actually, if you ask yourself right now, what is urgent and what is important from a revenue management point of view, I think you can kind of take a look at the data, if we still take a look at this, and see that this is probably where there's opportunity still. There's a lot of inquiries, but there's not a lot of deals. And we all know why. We know that it's because we don't have the supply. So the discussion that I had today with Y.0.0 was, what if now, Lilis, instead of taking and putting our supply on Facebook, what if we take our inquiries and start putting it on Facebook, Lilis? What if we start taking all the inquiries that we have, putting some context around it, and sharing it out onto Facebook groups and let people approach us with their supply, right? So we don't have to go and find out anything. We just have to say, hey, look, my guest is looking for this. Do you have anything that fits those parameters? And then we collect that. And this is where I think you can really start supercharging things, right? So let's say, for example, then I would see at some point that could start, let's say, today. At some point, we'll probably realize, oh my God, we have all this supply. All these people want to have on-site inspections. Then we could say, hey, Tendi, is there a way that you could do your virtual tour and go out and catalog these different properties? And maybe you can take Diva with you to go and create these on-site virtual inspections. So he says, okay. And then this can continue to pivot into a way such that we solve our problem by leveraging the social network correctly. So to answer Vidi's question and also Lilis's question, is it possible that we can use this way to accumulate our supply and also solve the problem of how do we use Airbnb in conjunction with other tools out there in the world to help us get more deals? What do you guys think? Over to Lilis.
Yes, sir. I think it's a good idea to like offer our inquiry to, for example, Facebook, right? And then so we can get a more offer, more offer of property that is fit into the request.
Done.
Right.
So that's essentially leveraging our ranking on Airbnb to go to a different place where people have less ranking and less exposure, and then getting that cycle turned around. Remember, you always want more inquiries coming on Airbnb because that then drives your ranking up, which allows you to sustainably feed this system. People on Facebook don't necessarily have ranking, so they might not necessarily get the same number of inquiries as we do. So somehow we have to like not let the inquiry flow drop like the way it is doing right now. We have to keep that inquiry process driven. And short of getting a conversion on Airbnb, which is the best way to drive the ranking up, the next best thing is to at least create the engagement opportunity. So that if you've shared, let's say, the inquiry on a Facebook group, you come up with 16 different options. You can engage this person probably all week long, right? And you can probably get a deal through this if it's a genuine, yeah, which is perfect because you have genuine guests on Airbnb, right? Most of the time, and then you probably get genuine product on Facebook most of the time. The problem is you don't get genuine guests on Facebook most of the time. You have a lot of tire kickers. So that could be a good way to connect two different systems to allow you to get the best for both sides. What do you think, Vidi?
Actually, I have a question about the inquiry conversion rate, sir.
Yes, sir.
I think this is discussed by. Wait, what's his name again? By Ernesto, right?
Okay.
Regarding our inquiries, how we measure our inquiries conversion.
That's right. That's right. Ernesto, his whole job was to do that. Whereas we here, we don't put that much of an emphasis on that right now.
Yeah. So
We should.
yeah, the numbers that are reflected here, does it reflect the inquiries that actually went through but to other properties?
What do you mean?
So if someone inquires through a listing,
Yeah.
but then it's not available or due to one case or another, but our HR are equipped with skills to convert it either way to other listings, right?
Right. And would that conversion be shown here?
It is not shown here.
Right.
Yeah.
Not if it didn't take place on Airbnb, right?
Yes.
And yes, so this is probably underreporting the conversion rate.
Yes, I agree. That's why. I regarding the initiative just now,
Right.
like we're not even sure how well we convert, like whether this is overreporting or underreporting.
Correct.
What's the funnel, like what's the size of the inquiries that we can actually convert using this new method? But
You're right.
either way, if let's say this the number of inquiries that didn't get converted is huge, that method, I agree with that method, I guess.
Okay. Also, we have to remember all the statistics that you currently see on Bigger are statistics to help optimize Airbnb growth. So let's say, for example, you took deals offline. That doesn't help Airbnb growth at all, right? Because Airbnb doesn't see it, so you get no ranking benefit from it. So it's essentially it's a non-convert on Airbnb side. So I think also to sustain our business, let's say across different platforms, we have to think about it's like, almost like an offering. You have to give an offering back to Airbnb in order for them to give you your next lead again. We have to think about some way to actually sustain that. Otherwise, this is not a sustainable method either. You're drawing traffic from Airbnb and converting it on another platform, but then if you're not getting something back to Airbnb, then it might not work. The only way for that to work is that you have to keep on launching new listings now on Airbnb, right? But then that goes back to the onboarding question. So what are we going to do? Are we going to onboard properties that are not clean? Are we going to onboard properties that are clean? So we need to make some decisions, I think, also at a company business level about what we want to do. If we're optimizing for revenue, we might not optimize for stability for post that one deal, right? So let's say what's the best solution to this? We want to get a deal, we want them to book on Airbnb, we want the thing. So we probably need to create a listing for it, right? If we create a listing for it, we have to probably ask them to book a night so they get a security deposit. That's good for us because we get security protection and we also get a ranking up benefit on that listing, which will help next guest find that listing again. The drawback is now what happens if the owner doesn't let us, whatever long-term wise, then we have a potential problem on that side. But we need to also prioritize our problems here too as well. If we have, let's say, this yearning to get long-term deals and we're unwilling to work with short-term properties, then we under optimize for revenue, right? So currently, I think that is a blocking point. Am I correct? Let's go to Lilis. Do we have clarity on, let's say, how to create a virtuous cycle here?
Mm, I don't have any. I mean, What do you mean by visual cycle, sir?
Okay, let's say for example, Lilis, right? Uh, okay, so the new system of taking this Airbnb inquiry and sharing it on Facebook, it's okay. It will work, right? You know, you'll get a lot of inputs in. You'll probably find somebody to convert. But the problem is that Airbnb will see it as non-conversion at the end of the day, because this person didn't book on Airbnb because they probably didn't book your listing. They probably booked something offline later, right? So then the problem is every day you do this, you're sacrificing how many future bookings you're going to get on Airbnb, because Airbnb doesn't see any engagement on that particular listing. So let's move ahead. Let's move ahead like a few weeks. So you do that for a while, and what you'll see is like this pattern. Your inquiries will drop and drop and drop. So then you get wise and you go, okay, all right, I've got a solution. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually get a new listing done whenever we work with a new partner, and we're going to launch that new listing, and that person will make them book at least one night on the listing, right? Same as like what happened with Sergey and Lily. So then you fix that problem, right? You fix the problem of decreasing traffic and decreasing inquiries. But then if you do that, you have a new problem now, which is what happens if somebody books on that listing for the future, right? Let's say for 6 months down the line. We don't have a long-term partnership with that particular new partner. We just met them on Facebook. So then what do we do? Do we then slow down and make a long onboarding process so that we take 2 weeks to get the partner onboarded and show them the MVP, explain to them what we plan to do in Bukit Vista 4, and do all that, and then risk them saying, no, I don't need all that? Or do we go with the option of just getting the revenue while we found this new person? So right now, I think just to make your guys' job easier, we need to make some choices across as a company, right? We need to make some choices about how much efficiency do we want and how much optimization do we want for what particular metric are we looking to optimize for. And that way, I think when we choose something, then we won't be like, oh, this screwed things up. We knew that this would screw up later on. We bought that price. That was the price of doing business this way. Does that make sense, Vidi?
Yes, sir. And regarding that problem, the long-term problem, uh, can't we set the setting on Airbnb to actually only allow guests to book like 3 months ahead of time or something like that?
We could actually, yeah. But
Yeah.
even then, Vidi, remember we're trying to partner with people so that we get deals done fast, right? We
Yeah.
have we have essentially what, a day between the point of inquiry and the point of where we follow up with them to close a deal. Now, this is just a one-off deal with any owner. We don't know how much availability they have. We don't care how much availability they have. We just want to know, are they available right now for a short-term deal? So it can be anything. It's really hard to set a parameter for, is it 3 months ahead? Is it 3 weeks ahead? Is it anything? Everything will just come as random, essentially. So any listing that we have has a potential downside for being very random and not being available if we list it. But if we continue doing this, then we are also going to be completely fucked after a while, because we will never get rankings again on our profile,
Right.
right? So we have an equal problem on both sides, right? One is a sort of a short-term problem. One is more of a long-term problem. But the long-term problem, if we don't address today, we will not get inquiries at all at some point in the future, right? So that's essentially what I'm trying to balance right now. Okay, that's a drill down. That's a drill down into the current method that we just talked about using the Airbnb Facebook inquiry connection.
Yeah.
Let's zoom up a little bit. Let's zoom up a little bit. So, Vidi, you mentioned about how we could, let's say, explore other things outside the current funnel. What's on your mind?
Yeah. I guess it's more like, how do I say it? Yes, like I can imagine like a company usually reach outside, right? How often do we actually reach out, like in a sense, involve ourselves with like associations or governments, let's say?
Okay, do the associations and governments, are they going to give us guests?
Possibly.
Okay. And what?
Like the funneling that was like a part of the abandoned initiative by Katendi.
Ah, right, right. That's a good point. Okay.
Yes.
Let me sort of let's do some brainstorming, right, around revenue. So let's talk about revenue input sources. Okay. Let's kind of go down each of them. So let's say, okay, let's talk about all the things that are under the entire world. First is travel agencies, right? You can work with travel agencies, and they can, potentially bring you guests. These are
Yes.
offline travel agencies. Okay. Okay. You can work with OTAs. You can work with, let's say, potential government agencies. Okay. Okay. What else is in your mind, Vidi? What else could we work with to potentially increase demand?
So, but actually, like this is still a rough, like something that just crossed my mind. But it's more like where actually, like compared to before, sir, how often, like you as the CEO, like there in an organization or a company, there is always the internal side and the external side, right?
Sure.
Right. But I understand that during the early stage of BV4, we have to actually modify a lot of our internals. But I remembered actually before when during the end of BV3, when we kind of have everything settled internally. You have more time to actually reach out externally, like to universities and all the stuff.
Correct.
If I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you're
yeah,
right. You're absolutely right. There's,
yeah,
there's all kinds of opportunities that we can do to sort of outreach to certain groups, right? Uh,
yes,
we can do outreach to, let's say, yoga groups, right? We can outreach to wedding groups, um, I don't know. We can outreach to all sorts of special interest groups right here, professional groups, special interest groups, all sorts of stuff under the sun, right?
yeah.
That part is possible. Okay, what else? What else can you think of? Lilis, any ideas on your side?
Mm, it's actually like Airbnb experience. I mean, I
Oh
think in
yeah, that's a
Bali.
good idea, right? We could
Yep,
put it to a different product, right? Like
yep.
Airbnb experiences online. Okay, all right, that's an interesting idea.
I mean, also, what is that? Get outreach with people who provide Airbnb experience.
Okay, so we could even create a community
Yeah,
of
yeah.
people who do Airbnb experiences. Okay, interesting. Okay, would this community buy our stuff, or are we selling their stuff to somebody else?
Uh, when they want when they buy Airbnb experience, maybe
And then,
they need what is that accommodation to live, right? For example, I have a friend actually that before the COVID-19, he sell. I mean, he have Airbnb experience in listed in Airbnb
okay,
in actually in Singaraja. So it's just like we can be partner with them.
okay,
That's the example.
okay, good. Okay, interesting. Let's continue. Let's go. Biddy, any more ideas on your side for sort of input options for revenue?
Oh yeah, yeah. So again, like how do we increase the traffic to like the Instagram post?
Mhm.
Do they redirect people to the link, or we receive inquiries via Instagram? Think about it
Okay,
like if we receive inquiries via Instagram, it will be again using your analogy it's more beneficial if they inquire through Airbnb, and but then we kind of get that kind of attention from Instagram
got
like
it.
that.
Okay, all right, got it. Interesting. So we got a bunch of options here. Any other ideas for the moment?
I mean increase traffic to Airbnb, but from Instagram and Facebook.
Okay, all right, I got it. Okay, let's break these down one at a time. So I'll sort of give my comments on each one of these. Right, these ones travel agencies usually are horrible. because of payment terms. Payment and also splits. If you try to work with a travel agency, most of the time they will not pay you until 3 months after the guest checks out. It's pretty horrible if you can imagine that, right? So not only do we not get paid, the owners don't get paid for 3 months after. You can kind of imagine how well that would sit with somebody like Eagle Lily. Generally, also, you get white labeled. You get white label, meaning that you don't necessarily get any credit for the work you do. The travel agency gets the credit. You just sort of are some sort of intermediary. But you get all the blame. You get all the blame and none of the credit. So, okay, those are the two reasons why we primarily have not worked with travel agents before, because it's very hard to essentially. They generally have a very unfair best practices, let's say, that's been going on. Okay, OTAs we've been doing really well, so that part we don't need to talk about anymore. Government agencies, this could be possible. I don't know anything about how the government pays or qualifies for properties, but I would imagine payment and qualification could be tricky, right? How does the government actually pay? And most likely, the government will probably make you go through a travel agency that they know of anyway, right? They don't want to have a relationship with you. They just want to have a relationship with the one party that they trust rather than, because later on when something goes wrong, they won't want to say, hey, I trusted Bukit Vista. I didn't know what these guys were doing. No, they trusted Pacto. Pacto trusted Bukit Vista, and that's Pacto's problem, not this. So there's that part is sort of there. Outreach groups, this is all possible at the moment, right? All possible. Generally, the reason why we don't do this is because there's a lot of risk of getting cut off. Okay, so you're going to get two types of travelers in this. You're going to get the recurring travelers, and you're going to get the one-off travelers. The one-off travelers aren't that great because you get no recurring income. But the recurring travelers, what they'll do is they'll find a way to the owner, like with Lilis and Sergey, and they'll find a way to circumvent us over time. So what's happened is actually worse. What's happened is that instead of having access to the availability now, over one booking, if it's a recurring traveler, now you have, let's say, 3 months not available anymore because a yoga group will just book directly with the owner now and cut those 3 months out of your availability every year. So we generally don't do that because of that risk too as well. And it's a fairly, it's not just, it's a real risk. If somebody's going to come by every year, why would they need to go through you or go through us to have that arrangement?
We have the contract, right, sir?
We do have the contract, but you know what owners do? They say, I'm using it, right? Or they'll come up with some sort of little thing on the contract, say private use. Usually what happens, Vidi, is that we don't know about how this actually happens because there's a lot of ways to be mischievous here, right? But the end point is that it is generally not a sustainable option.
No, I mean, we have the contract on the limit to how many days.
Right. So that's that. But then why would we bring in a guest that cut off, let's say, 90 days or 60 days from the total? We'd rather have nobody come back. And that, so the way I see that is, let's say this happens. Let's say a family reunion happens at this villa every year. So before, the owner would have, let's say, 30 to 60 days, and we would get still most of that if we were able to sell the rooms. But now this family comes in and take 14 of those. So we get commission once, and then every other year we get nothing. And no, not that we just get nothing. We get that block of dates removed from the availability on that group. So that's not very ideal either. It's also risky, right? It's also risky because, let's say, for example, generally, if you're working with a yoga group, a wedding group, a professional group, these guys have a lot of other groups that they don't just send one party over. They might send multiple parties over. So you might even risk a situation where the owner stops working with you, like Robin did with us, because they sold out the entire thing for a year to a certain group. So Robin at Villa Asmara gave it to Jack. Jack is a he's a gym owner in Bingham. So, you know, like as soon as you bring in this type of guest, there's a chance that they might poach the entire thing from you too as well. And right now, a lot of owners would go, yes, I prefer to work with, let's say, a yoga group that's coming in the next 6 months to do 6 retreats, rather than with Bukit Vista, where I have no certainty of what's happening. So there is a possibility to get, let's say, a reward, but there's also a possibility you might lose the relationship too as well. Airbnb experiences, Lilis, people generally book their accommodations before they book their experiences, for the most part, right? In fact, if you look at Airbnb experiences, one of the highest correlations to whether or not an experience will be booked is distance to the listing. So the shorter the distance to the listing, the more likely that experience will get booked. Very few times do people book the experience first and then book the listing afterwards. It could happen if the experience is really amazing, but generally we are upstream from experiences. So the flow goes kind of like blogs are upstream from plane ticket sales. Plane ticket sales are upstream from hotel sales. Hotel sales are upstream from transportation and experience sales. So you would want to tap the one layer above you generally, rather than tapping the layer beneath you in that particular regard. Okay, and then increasing traffic from Airbnb from these sources is doing Airbnb more benefit and doing us less. The reason why is because most people on Instagram do not have an Airbnb profile. So if you're sending somebody over to, let's say, Airbnb, you're potentially turning that person into a long-term Airbnb customer, which might or might not happen, but less about like actually getting your particular booking booked. So that type of dynamic in marketing would be very unfair, let's say, right? I'm sending Airbnb a potential lifetime customer. Airbnb might just give me one booking through that particular mechanic. So that's where the drawback is. It's not about balance or anything, but it's mostly about most Instagram and Facebook users, they don't have an Airbnb account. So they would need to be first an Airbnb user before they could book your accommodation, which is also another friction source to overcome, right? So that's basically the summary. I don't want to discourage you guys, right? Because these are great ideas and they're worth discussing. But the reason why we've been able to, let's say, thrive and grow, remember each year we grow like 40, 50, 60%, is because of the special dynamic that the OTA provides us. The special dynamic is each sale leads to another sale, and the capital stays with Bukit Vista, which is in the reviews, right? All that capital, all the reason why people book again is in the reviews, and we own that. All these other channels right now, we don't own anything. So we might do a one-off booking with a yoga group. We might do a one-off booking with a wedding group. But do we own that audience that the wedding group is coming to us for?
Yeah.
Not really, right? Do we have any protection in place to prevent the wedding group to? Kind of, but over time, not very sustainable either. Owners have been known to break contracts, like Ibu Lily, right? Without even really a care in the world, without even like an apology. You just go, you know what? And what can we really do about it? We can't do shit. On Airbnb, it's pretty fair because if the owner is trying to do that to us, they hurt themselves too. So we hostage their reviews, but they hostage our money and our future income too, right? So we have a balance of power, so to speak. Not to say that anything of the rest are not good ideas. I think it's a good time to start thinking about these. In fact, I'm talking to a professional coach who will tell me to look for more ideas. We have a few options, everyone. We can start a blog, maybe on, let's say, digital nomadism, right? We can get digital nomads to start thinking about using Bukit Vista for their long-term rental needs. And that's a project we asked Content to do a week ago for the school, right? For Asia Exchange. Why do I like Asia Exchange? Asia Exchange will need this every year. And they'll need other things from us. So it's not worthwhile if they screw us on this one and lose out the other sort of material that they're getting to as well. So we do have actually this. We can work with schools, and we're already working with schools. We can work with, let's say, schools. So there's some obvious stuff right now. There's some obvious stuff. We should list our long-term deals on website, Instagram, Facebook, right? Like the way that we're publishing right now. These long-term deals need to be as visible as possible to a potential seeker. Right now, they're not on our website. So what's up with that, right? I think that's just the basics. But moving on forward, I think we could explore the idea of working with a government agency. Like, what would it take? Who would you work with to see if that would actually work? But I don't know. Like, Airbnb was pretty perfect for scaling, and without Airbnb, it's really difficult to scale. As you can see, we get guests that cheat us, right? We get guests that aren't truthful, because now you've lost the trust and safety factor of being on the platform. And now you've lost the feedback factor and the positive growth factor that happens when you're on the platform. So this is why I thought Airbnb was pretty special when I first saw it, right? I was like, yeah, this solves a lot of problems that you would have if you were trying to do this business outside. Now, okay, let's zoom out again. Zooming out again, this is the radical revenue idea. Should we even do accommodation rentals anymore? Right? Now, this business that I just described right here is based on an accommodation rental constraint. But if we zoom out of accommodation rentals, then that could open up all kinds of new possibilities, right? So what could we do? Maybe we could sell software, right? Maybe we could, I don't know, selling software is pretty hard though. Most people like their software free. But, okay, I don't want to limit down ideas, but I'll say this. Outreach is still possible, right? Let's reach out to as many people who might need our services. Maybe let's go explore different Facebook groups. Let's say, hey, we have this product. But I think also we probably would at this point in outreach get much more supply than actual demand at the moment, right? So you can probably take an outreach program. You can bring it to Portugal. You can bring it to Italy. You can bring it everywhere and accumulate as much supply as you would ever want, because everybody's looking to sell their supply. For demand side, I would say you're kind of constrained on this particular thing. You're kind of constrained on, okay. The other thing is this, actually, Lilis. You can ask the question: how have other people been getting deals? Like when we lose Villa Asmara to a long-term deal, how did that happen? Who brought that in? Who was able to bring a year-long guest, and what marketing methods did they use, right? So what did they use? They used a sign in the middle of the street, right? That's all they're using. They're not fancy. They just put a sign in the middle of the street saying, long-term villa rents available here. Inquire at this phone number. So that's another one of those things that I think we can think about. We don't always need to get so, like, we need to use a technology solution. We could use a clean, dirty, easy solution by going over to a print shop and putting up a poster on an abandoned building, which there are a lot of at this point, right? And seek it that way. Okay, but Lilis, what I want you to do, right, say if you've run out of ideas right now to work on, is work with Wayana on this idea of using inquiries to bait supply, all right? We want to get as much supply as possible, because as soon as we get that supply, we can start doing things with it, right? We can start advertising it. We can maybe start listing it. We'll have some methodology to it. But if we don't have any supply, which is the key constraint right now, then we don't really have anything to deal with, right, at the moment. But look, in about another few weeks, things are going to change. Everybody agrees that the first travelers to come back will most likely be young travelers. Young travelers are probably going to be looking for things like guest houses. They're probably going to be looking for the things that we currently have not rented out. Also, Lilis, another thing I noticed, we're advertising places like Puerto Sabina for a single room for $12 million a month. Robin rented out his 3-bedroom pool villa in Bingen for $13 million a month. So I think we also need to, like, when we issue a deal out into the market, we really need to ask ourselves, is this deal truly attractive on a consumer side? Not just what the owners want, but would you buy it, right? Would you pay $12 million for a room inside of a hotel right now? I don't think anybody would, right? So I think we also need to look at the prices from a very consumer point, because the consumer is king right now, not the supply. Okay, all right. Over to Lilis.
Okay, actually about the Puri Sabina, Mas Gani already asked Cynthia and Vidi. Actually, I think from Vidi's side, the owner asked for that because Puri Sabina is Vidi's bid actually.
Okay.
Maybe Vidi can know the explanation about that.
Okay. Vidi, that's actually, I would say, don't publish properties that have prices that don't make any sense. Putting Sabina asking for 12 million, by putting our brand on that, we must look ridiculous, I think, in the market space right now, because I mean villas are renting out for 12 million, and here's a single room that's asking.
Okay, so should I cancel out because Kagani is about to publish it this evening?
I would say yes. I would say probably stop that. And this is where I need revenue managers to be a bit more rigorous. You guys are looking at Facebook. You guys are seeing what the deals are in the marketplace. If there's a deal that doesn't make sense, you don't want people to go, "Oh, Bukit Vista is that company that tries to overcharge everybody right now," because it's not Puri Sabina's brand that goes on that ad. It's our brand that goes onto that ad. And currently that price makes 0 cents at the moment. But hey, if you want, unless you mean it intentionally, unless you're being intentional about it. Maybe you're being intentional about it because that's what you believe COVID safe cleaning should actually cost, right? Now, if it's that, then that could actually be pretty good, right? Maybe you've been able to define, let's say, the first property COVID safe cleaning in the market, and you can get triple what another property can be, if that is your intention. But if that's not your intention, then I think if that's the case, then we should take up most of the commission on that, because that value is brought by Bukit Vista, not by Puri Sabina, right? So, but commissions aside, just be intentional. If you do launch it, let's say that's your intention, that the COVID safe cleaning would actually elevate the price. But if it's not, then you need to really compare apples with apples in the market and make sure that what we are selling is something that somebody would buy. Okay, so okay, all right, cool. Anything that you want to say?
No, I just come back from the.
Have you started the post yet? The inquiry post on Facebook?
No, I haven't.
Okay, when will you start that?
Maybe after this one. 6 months.
Okay. Do you want to start it and then show Lilis what you're doing? Yeah.
Yes.
And then you don't even need to post the most recent. You can post inquiries that you got like a month ago, right? The point is to show the groups that Bukit Vista gets a lot of inquiries, and the point is to drive a lot of new leads to come in, and that way we fix our supply problem hopefully in a very short amount of time. Okay. I saw everybody who goes on these groups and they say that I need this. They get tons of engagement. Why? Because everybody has something they want to sell. So yeah, let's give that a shot. All right. In the meantime, Lilis, Vidi, I don't want to stop you guys from thinking about other potential sources of revenue. There is one thing that we discussed quite a while back in the marketing team. It's called a product market fit. That as much as we tried, and we tried for a very long time, we tried for 3 years before we had Airbnb to get short-term rentals. It was really hard. It was like what we're facing right now. And then when you turn on Airbnb, it goes like, 1,000 times faster, right? By the same amount of time, we would have brought like 300 or 400 times more bookings if we use Airbnb. So it is like a train. If you need to carry that amount of load, you do need a train to carry it. Otherwise, it's just almost impossible to carry that load, moving it one parcel at a time. Okay. So, but good news is, like we seem to have been seeing, the bookings are stabilizing. Thank God. Over here, not entirely stabilizing, but they're not getting any worse, which is a positive sign. And we're getting quite a lot of future bookings in peak season dates in June, July, December. So it means that people, despite all this shit, are still thinking about traveling. Okay, for the meantime, let's just focus on this. If you can't focus on getting any demand, focus on getting as much supply as possible. Okay. I think that will still be really good. If you can focus on getting as much supply, then as soon as things get better, then we will be able to. This goes back to your original theory, right, Vidi? The initiative of getting more supply to help revenue management.
Yep. That's the very first one. Like, yeah.
Give it a shot. Give it a shot. That could work. And you know what? Getting supply right now is perfect. I mean, the more supply you get right now, the more potential energy you're building up for when things are going to be better, and then the more release you'll have. So think of it this way: we're rolling the rock as far up the hill as possible, so that when the time comes, the rock will slide as far down the slope as possible. So getting more supply is building that potential energy. Okay, I think I've gone way over time. Yeah, 5:16 already. But I really did want to clarify this idea around focus. Right now is a good time to diversify, right? But also know why we focused on Airbnb. There was a specific reason why this relationship works really well, and it's because mainly of trust and safety. You can trust Airbnb because Airbnb won't try to screw us for the most part, at least intentionally. You can't necessarily have that with any other sort of direction you go. You don't just, you don't know. The other part is that positive feedback loop, which is pretty sweet. But okay, all right. Any other questions or any other discussion at the moment?
I actually have a question, but it will take way over time. But yeah,
Okay.
I'll push that up to Wednesday.
Okay, I'll listen to it right now, and then Vidi.
Right. Maybe you can prepare an answer first. Like,
Okay, what's the question, sir?
so the question is actually, do we want people to book our property because we are Bukit Vista or because we are in Airbnb?
Very good question. All
Yeah,
right.
because like for example, if others like I don't know, those who build their own brand like Red Doors or something like oh it's an Airbnb, right? It's Airbnb. It's not Bukit Vista, but it's Airbnb.
I know.
Like, do we want them to book with us because because it's Bukit Vista, that's why we search for that particular property in Airbnb, let's say.
I would say the best way to answer that question, Vidi, is do you follow YouTube or do you follow YouTubers?
Exactly, YouTubers, right?
Right. Do you follow Instagram or do you follow less influential people on Instagram?
Yes, that's what I've been thinking, sir. That's why I don't the discussion just now regarding when we try to bring people to Airbnb, but most probably they will not book with us again.
Yeah. Well, I think it's an important question, Vidi, and it's also related to why, if you ask yourself, is Red Door successful? Is Airy successful? Is Oyo successful right now? And is Nita Room successful? Most of these brands have failed. In fact, they failed in Canggu, and they're not really doing that great anywhere. If you ask yourself why that's happening, it's because they're not being distributed. You can't. It's hard for like Airy to compete with, let's say, Booking.com, right?
Yeah.
It's hard for Airy or Red Doors to compete with Agoda and Booking.com and Traveloka and Airbnb. You just don't have that network effect that would happen. So let's just say this, right? I would like to be on Airbnb as a platform, just the way that YouTube or Instagram is a platform.
Yes.
I would like that, let's say, to have a presence on the leading presence on Airbnb. Because I do not believe, actually, Vidi, that people will download an app in the future to book Bukit Vista properties. That's just ain't going to happen, right? I don't think that. Well, maybe to use Bukit Vista as a management service. Yes, I hope so. That's what we're working on the app for, but on the management service, not as a guest. I don't think anybody used their Oyo or Airy apps very often. Because why would I, right? I would just go on Traveloka and I'd be able to shop for everything on the platform instead of limit myself to just a specific flavor, which is really not that different from.
Yeah. That's not what I'm trying to say, sir. So when people go to Airbnb, do you want them to search for the best property, and that's why we strive to have a good ranking in the property, or do you want them to like, oh, there's a Bukit Vista property?
Makes
sense.
I believe they're the same. So by being the best, okay, I believe that any brand has essentially a duty to its customers, right? So, like, let's say Nike. What makes Nike good? What makes Nike good is all the people that love Nike, right? So, when you drive your brand, there's two ways to drive your brand. One is through advertising, the other is through customer testimonial and feedback.
Right.
So we don't have the benefit of advertising, right? We can't just keep on saying Bukit Vista is awesome because we're awesome. We are constricted to a pure superhost or a pure meritocracy moment where if we want to drive our brand and have our brand seen a lot, then we have to do a good job every time. Nike doesn't have to do that because Nike, I don't know of any, maybe there's a shoe review site, but most people buy Nike because they see an ad, right? Or they fall in love with, like, the people that Nike sponsors. They have a attachment, an irrational attachment to the brand. So Bukit Vista is essentially a rational brand, meaning that we get brand if we do a good job. And if we don't, we start doing a bad job. But that's okay. I've realized that's okay because that is good for us. So many companies live on a legacy of a brand built by their predecessors, but they don't live up to what their brand should be today anymore. And those brands die sooner or later anyway. What Airbnb has done is it's made that process more meritocracy, right? So by doing a good job, you do become a great brand and people will see you and people will seek you. So it's a virtuous feedback cycle. It's made our brand actually, I mean, if you think about how many people have seen our brand, it must be in the millions by now. Yeah, if 100,000 guests, you figure like a 3% conversion rate. So you take that, you multiply it by, let's say, 33. Okay, so that's probably 3.3 million people that have seen the Bukit Vista brand during their search process on Airbnb. Could we have gotten that anywhere else? I don't know. We'd have to pay a lot of money to get 3 million targeted users on YouTube or Facebook or anything else. Now, did we pay Airbnb? Fuck yeah, we did. We paid Airbnb the same amount that we took for ourselves, right? Because we're 50-50 partners with Airbnb. They get paid 15%, we get paid 15 to 20%. So in that dimension, I think, yes, if we could find a way to relieve ourselves of it and build our own independent brand, that would be pretty cool. But I've also noticed, Vidi, that that's been the hotel fallacy for so long. So many hotels, they try to create their own brand and they do their own website, and they do worse. They do worse because what kind of people do you get that come to your website? The people that are looking for a deal. So what will you have to do? You're going to have to give them a discount. So it's either you pay a commission or you give people a discount. So either way, you're not really, I don't know if you're getting any maybe you're getting some loyalty from the person so that they become a lifetime customer. But as far as the strategy goes right now, I learned really early on there's no point in fighting Airbnb or trying to be independent of Airbnb. The best way to see it is like eBay. I was an eBay seller back in the early days. There's only like 6 big eBay sellers now. It's pretty fucking crazy. There are eBay sellers with 10 million reviews, and then there are eBay sellers that don't sell anything. And that's a result of positive feedback network effects.
Yeah, sure. That's what I meant. I'm not trying to propose an idea to oppose Airbnb.
All right.
So yeah, yeah. That's why I'm confused with what you discussed because it's not related with what I asked.
What you asked, if I understand correctly, is like how much. Okay, we're trying to develop a brand presence, right? Like how many of our guests are booking because Bukit Vista is there, and how many of our guests are booking because we're highly ranked on Airbnb.
Yep, but I'm not saying that we should be independent of Airbnb. I'm saying what your analogy regarding eBay, but like there are only it's being monopolized, right?
Oh yeah,
yeah. Right. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, okay. To cut short, maybe it's like this. So we're not trying right now. We're branding, but we're not trying to brand ourselves against guests, but only against potential partners.
You got it. You got it. Yeah. On the guest side, I think if we want to do branding, we should probably use Instagram. We should probably use Instagram as our tool to do branding. So remember, if you want to do branding, you need to have a long period of engagement with your brand, right? Like most people, like if you're going to buy something, let's say, Vidi, you're going to go to, you're going to go take a trip to Singapore, right? And you're going to maybe go and book a ticket for Singapore Flyer, or you're going to maybe book an experience somewhere. And maybe you go through a travel agent to get a ticket to Universal Studios. What are you going to really remember? Are you going to remember the agent? Or are you going to remember Universal Studios? You're probably not going to remember the agent that got you that ticket, unless that agent reached out to you beforehand. I said, hey, look, when you get to Singapore, here's my top 3 things that you can do on your way to Universal Studios. And these are from 3 theme park ideas after you come back. And so in order to actually get a brand built, you need to prolong that engagement and also get as many engagement points as possible. It's just not possible to do that just on Airbnb, right? Because I guess you could keep on going back. But if you bring them over to Instagram and say, hey, look, I've got all this cool stuff on Instagram. You should follow me right now so you can see all the cool stuff before. And then guess what? 3 months later, I'll come back to you. I'll say, hey, you got any pictures you'd like to share? And then I engage you again. And then that way you have essentially 3, 4, 5, 6 points of engagement with a guest. And you can actually build a brand with guests on something like Instagram, which they have a lot of engagement with on like a daily basis, right? But on something like Airbnb, it's hard to build a brand with guests because they only open it during the trip. They don't open it after the trip is over, right? So how are they supposed to understand your brand after that? So I think this is why marketing is so key about the audience, the problem, and then the channel. Same audience, different problem, different channel now. So yes, for the most part, we're trying to brand ourselves with property owners because that is our chief constraint to growth. Our chief constraint to growth has never been not getting enough guests until recently. So if we can find a way, I think, to brand our guests, it would probably not be through Airbnb. It would probably be through some system or some point where they have multiple engagements every day, before the trip, during the trip, but most after the trip. Yeah. So that would be the most reasonable strategy. But this is a good question, though. I love this question. This really gets to the heart of what it takes to build, I think, a company and how you use the channel for each purpose. Don't be used by the channel. So many people, I think, when they go about their marketing plan, we got to do something on Instagram. No. Instagram's got to do something for you, right? But for Instagram to do something for you, you need to know what it's good at, and you need to know how to use it. So you don't hear about, like, let's say a knight or a warrior saying, I need to do something with my sword, right? It depends, right? Maybe sometimes you use a sword, maybe sometimes you use a spear, maybe sometimes you use a ninja star. It really just depends on the circumstance. Don't always be like using a sword. I'm gonna kill that guy 20 meters away. I'm gonna use my sword. So I'm gonna rush up all the way. No, use an arrow, right? So select your channel based on what intent you'd like to have. And for, let's say, branding, you got to think about, how do I build a brand, right? How do I get these engagements? But yeah, I think this part is actually a good question to ask, not us. This question should be asked to a guest. At what point did you fall in love with? Were you aware of the Bukit Vista brand, right? At what point did you know that we were Bukit Vista? Did you know how to pronounce the name? All these are great user-focused group study questions to really understand if you're actually making brand impact. And you're right. I mean, I think we could have done that better, yeah, to begin with, but we didn't. So a lot of brand opportunities lost. But in the future, yeah, let's get our guests branded on Instagram. Let's get our property partners branded on the website, Facebook ads, other outreach programs, maybe being involved in Facebook communities, and employees probably through LinkedIn, right? So each channel will have its purpose for each particular use. All right?
Right.
Okay. All right. Lilis, how was that? Hopefully that was maybe beyond the scope of the regular. But
It's really long discussion.
okay. Was it helpful, Lilis?
Maybe something kind of clarification. I mean, we are sure that Airbnb is our large marketplace, and maybe it's clarification for making sure that
Oh
we
yeah.
have to go on Airbnb.
It's the only way that we can get up to 100 bookings a day. There's no other way we could get that again. And let's say $300,000 a month. There's no way that I can think of.
Mm.
Yeah,
Not
there's some,
scalable because
yeah.
like direct like go there like pick up the cash.
yeah.
Like
Do we have 30 YNs to go there and pick up cash from 30 different people every day? Can't be
sign the
done.
contract. Like it's just guess like if they want like big thing like what how we gonna do it. Like yeah, we've been there actually. We did this way because like just to get money. Like everything else we follow like the market instead of we create the system for them. So,
No. Unfortunately, yeah, Airbnb is part of the demand generation system, and it's fairly, irreplaceable in terms of demand generation. So yeah, we're sort of stuck on it right now, but it's okay. Remember, the whole world is stuck right now. It's not like anybody, I think, anywhere is getting anything that other people are not getting. So it's like the part we can only control is how do we recover faster. And yes, COVID safe certification is one of those steps. The more COVID safe certification we put out there, the better we'll do on the initial new wave. But we got to be careful too. If people get sick in our properties, then that could backfire too as well,
yeah.
right? So need to be cautious. I believe there's also COVID safe certification on Airbnb as well. We don't know anything about how to switch that on right now, do we?
Yeah, and there's also ones that are issued by the government, right?
By what?
By the government.
I don't know about that. How does the government issue a certification?
That's actually the core of the issue that I'm trying to bring up through that news article. It said that governments are preparing like algorithms or some kind of like that with along with the Association of Hotels in Indonesia or something like that.
Okay, right. Those are usually people getting together to discuss ideas, and the execution generally is very, very slow, generally speaking. But I won't dismiss that. I think every hotel probably at this point is already on. Most brands, if you looked on LinkedIn, are already starting some sort of COVID safe cleaning.
Yes. That's
They're not
what I
gonna
heard. Yeah.
What the government can do is that they can enforce COVID safe green zones, which is what Justin said, right? So Bali.
Oh, they have.
Oh, good. Okay. And Bali's going to be a first green zone.
Yeah, that's why like yesterday during the Idul Fitri, they actually allowed some mosque to actually perform ceremonies because it's considered as a COVID green zone.
Oh, good. Okay, fantastic. Well, hopefully they open up more of that and we can get on with business as usual then. Okay. Good stuff then. I'll need to end this meeting because it's already gone half an hour time. But all right, we discussed quite a lot of stuff. But I wanted to make sure that you guys have enough background to make your own judgments, okay, on that one. So, okay, done. All right, that's pretty much it. Let's. I think I've already rotated the chairperson in progress. Feedback for me. Any feedback, Lilis, as chair today?
Maybe only the time, sir.
I know. Yeah. Okay, as chair and on time. Okay, thank you. Okay. No, I was worried about you, Lilis. I was like, oh my God, I better make sure Lilis gets as much information. Otherwise, like get as much inspiration and ideas as possible from.
Actually, right now I'm like lack of inspiration on what to do because thinking about my background is not in computer science. Like I don't have enough skills on coding, and it's just like I cannot compare video speeds on what is that like doing the optimization. So it is like giving wonders to me on how to progress.
now's the time for all of us to develop new personal skills. I mean, none. I think a lot of people didn't have professional networking skills before, and LinkedIn writing post skills, right? So it's okay if it takes a little bit longer than just take a little bit longer to learn the skills. I think that will serve you well throughout your entire career, Lois, right? So
Yes, sir.
don't put too much pressure on yourself to finish it within a certain time, but make just 1% better every day on I think coding skills. That's what I try to do, at least. Okay, Vidi, any feedback?
Well, the Scrum itself, it's as usual. It's very systematic, and the progress of the board is quite clear. The activity asynchronous communication is also pretty good in this guild in this chapter.
Okay.
As chair, yeah, maybe the time.
Okay.
But yeah, RM's one of RM's problem is that the Scrum is really quick. It's very systematic, but the discussion that we have are always long, right?
I think that's normal.
Because of the discovery phase during
Yeah,
RM.
it's a long discovery phase, short execution phase, right? So
Yeah.
that tends to be what's the thing. Okay, all right. Well, I need to end the meeting right now, otherwise time gets. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Have a nice day. I'll see you all on Wednesday.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, see ya. Bye
See
bye.
ya.